Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week, since we recorded early and haven't gotten a chance to check our email, I don't fucking know, because we might get a sponsor between then and now.
We actually might, but as of this moment, we don't have a sponsor for this episode. But if we did have a sponsor, I would hope that they would have a shout out something as cool as the Food Empowerment Project. I just really love their work, so support what they do. And we also talk about them a little bit in this episode. So check them out, Food Empowerment Project. But if you want to sponsor an episode and shout out something you are either a part of or you just really like, or anything, really, go to whichsidepodcast.com, donate $10. That's how much these episodes cost us to make. That's all we ask.
This is episode 105, which is the same price that freedom costs.
Oh my god, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that $1.05.
Freedom costs $1.05. This week we talk with Anita from Toronto Pig Save.
You know, and right off the bat, we talk a little bit about Tolstoy, and I learned a lot that I didn't know. So she gave me a little bit of stuff. I'm actually going to be reading it. So thank you. What news and events do we have going on this week?
Well, it's getting to be that time of year where we celebrate the mass extinction and execution of our indigenous friends.
Oh, otherwise known as Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Such a fucked up name.
So, find your local vegan Thanksgiving and eat, because celebrate that.
Yeah. No, but since it is a traditional time of gathering of friends and family, gather with your friends and family and make a vegan Thanksgiving. Find your local one. They're in most major cities. They have a big one. If not, you still have a little bit of time to organize one yourself and do it. They're amazing. It's the best thing ever.
And you can talk about the real meaning behind Thanksgiving while you're at it. I hate that holiday.
I do too.
But I do like to eat.
I do too. And we actually talk about tofurkey glazes in this episode.
We do.
So stick around for that. November 13th, 2005. I didn't know this, and this is not that long ago. I feel bad I didn't know this. There was a Food Not Bombs activist that was killed by a bunch of fascists while serving food in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Crazy.
Fucking serving food. God,
I don't know. Food Not Bombs gets a lot of shit.
They do. They get a lot of shit. I have mad respect for people who do it all the time. So keep it up, you guys. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Oh, hi, how are you?
How's it going?
Very good, thanks.
Good. I'm Jordan.
Oh, okay.
And I'm Jeremy, by the way, so I hope you can tell us apart.
Okay. You sound fairly similar, but I'll try.
That's what we get told. How you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah, I just had a nice day reading and catching up on stuff.
Good.
What you reading right now?
I'm reading a literary criticism on Tolstoy by Simmons. It was really good because I read a lot of Tolstoy books.
Uh-huh.
And it was, he covered his nonfiction work. So things like The Kingdom of God is Within You, which is about nonviolence and love, and his work against capital punishment, that kind of stuff, his vegetarianism and so forth.
I'm not familiar with his vegetarianism, but Tolstoy is usually above my head.
Well, he had this spiritual crisis around 1880.
Uh-huh.
And then he went veg around 1885 for the last 25 years of his life, and he stopped sports hunting. And then he and his best friend Chertkov were the leading publishers of animal rights in Russia. And they translated a lot of books, like Henry Salt's books on animal rights. And he wrote the introduction to this book by Howells, like an English author who wrote chapters on all the famous vegetarians throughout history, such as Pythagoras and all that. And so Tolstoy wrote the introduction called The First Step. And if you go to the International Vegetarian Union website, they have an extract from that. And he said the first step to leading a good life is to go veg.
Oh, wow. So was his vegetarianism, would that be more along the line of being completely vegan?
Back then, I mean, the word vegan wasn't there yet. But in some of the literature, he was conscious of it. So one of my favorite books by him is called Resurrection. That was his third novel. Like, he's famous for War and Peace and Anna Karenina, but he wrote a third major novel and only 3 novels in his life, and the last one was Resurrection. And he is a political prisoner. It's about political prisoners, and one of them is like he reads Marx and he doesn't like wear leather, and that. So he was aware of that.
Oh, wow!
And there were Tolstoyan societies that emerged throughout the world, like in Britain, the U.S. One of the big supporters in the U.S. was Ernst Crosby, who was the head of the Vegetarian Society in New York, and he was a Tolstoyan. And some of the Tolstoyan groups in Russia, like there was a debate within those communes, whether to use, oxen for labor. So some of them refused that and only depended on, human labor to plow. And also the issue of like dairy cows and milk, like that. Some of them supported it, some didn't. So it was like there were those discussions among Tolstoyan societies.
That's amazing. What got you into Tolstoy so much?
Well, I did a PhD in political science on green learning, and I was interested in the role of various ways of learning, and one of them is protest art.
Uh-huh.
And then after I finished university is when I learned a lot more than when I was in university. And I just started reading on my own. And I came across Tolstoy's What is Art? And it was the best book I ever read on art. And he defines art as related to ethics. Like that's the main. He says it's a form of communication. And it's a way of spreading, good feelings. And he just said in terms of subject matter, like promoting love, like a life of service or love towards your neighbor and universal feelings.
Uh-huh.
And anyways, it's a really amazing book, and it includes like animal rights as a criterion. So in my, I should send you on my signature and email, I use one of the quotes from that. I'll just send it to you because it's so cool. From the book, I'll just send it to you via Skype if you can catch it here.
Yeah, I've started War and Peace, and that was as far as I ever got into Tolstoy.
Yeah, that was before he had his conversion. So I just sent you What is Art, which was written in like, I think it was like 1898 or something, sort of late 1890s.
Here, Jordan, read that so everyone can see it.
Art can evoke reference. Let me see. Let me get closer here.
Yeah, it's small print.
Yeah. Art can evoke reverence for the dignity of every person and for the life of every animal. Can make people ashamed of luxury, of violence, of revenge, or of using for their pleasure that of which others are in need. Can compel people freely, gladly, and without even noticing it, to sacrifice themselves in service of others. The task of art is to make that feeling of love of one's neighbor, the customary feeling, and the instinct of all people.
Right.
That's amazing. I really like that.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much sums up his philosophy, which was about nonviolence and the love-based approach to change. And he wrote a book called The Kingdom of God is Within You. And it's all about nonviolence and a love-based approach to change. And the first chapter draws a lot on William Lloyd Garrison. And his sons actually visited his son. I don't know if it's plural, but I think it was just a son, visited him at his estate in Russia. And Gandhi read the book in the 1890s when he was in India. Mm-hmm. And that helped him launch the Satyagraha nonviolence campaign. He used it as a key, inspiration for choosing nonviolence.
That's interesting. So was his view on nonviolence like a strict view, like complete pacifism then? Yeah, totally pacifist. Like he wanted the total disarmament of armies. He said he always strived for perfection and ideals. And he says he doesn't expect people to be perfect, but at least strive for that. I like that idea of striving for perfection. That's like where my whole political standpoint comes from being an anarchist. Like, we
Cool.
should strive for that, and get as close as we possibly can.
He was an anarchist too.
Yeah,
He was
I did not know that.
Yeah. People called him a Christian anarchist, but
Uh-huh.
in terms of his religion, he actually didn't believe in Christ as a God, but just as a historical person with some great ideas such as pacifism and not owning property and things like that.
Does he have any writing like critiquing some of the other Russian anarchists, like Bakunin or anything?
Yes, he has some essays, like short essays, like after the 1905 revolution in Russia, he wrote something. I mean, because he didn't believe in a violent approach to revolution, including workers' revolution. But he's at the same time, he said, okay, so the anarchists are committing some violence by, assassinating, but he says the state is overwhelmingly more violent. And then he said, and also there's a prerogative in terms of, liberty and because that some of the fight was over that, just having, basic liberties.
So I've never even heard of any of this. So was his kind of stance like he understands where the anarchists are coming from in that term of violence, just didn't want to portray it himself, or?
Well, he was a nonviolent anarchist because there's many streams of anarchism, and he was definitely an anarchist because he I would recommend his book Resurrection. It's a fiction book, but it's an attack on the church, the state, the military, and prisons.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a really good book, and there's a little bit of veganism and certainly a lot of environmentalism in it.
I'd be interested to know if there's anything like on Bakunin's critique on God and the state. So,
sorry, can you say that again? What do you mean?
So Bakunin has his book God and the State.
Oh, okay.
And I was just wondering if he ever critiqued that, because one of Bakunin's favorite famous quotes out there is if there is a God, it'd be necessary to abolish him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in Russia, like the Orthodox Church was part of the state.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly oppressive institution, and all of Tolstoy's works critiqued the church mercilessly, and he was excommunicated in the early 1900s, and it actually led to a lot of sympathy for him.
Well, you just piqued me. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be in airports for 24 hours, so I got to find something to read.
Yeah, I would recommend Resurrection. It's it's an amazing book. I would recommend The Kingdom of God is Within You. Let's see what else. I like What is Art? If you just want to know more, if you like that kind of subject, aesthetics. Let's see. His short stories are a lot of fun, especially if you're in an airport and you have little spaces of time here and there. There's he wrote something called Walk in the Light and 23 Tales. And all of them have moral messages, and it's basically a fiction version of The Kingdom of God is Within You. And one of them is called Ivan the Fool, and it's totally an anarchist tale. I think you'll have it's a lot of fun. But yeah, so his short stories are great. I mean, right now I'm reading his letters, his diaries, and once you read his work, and then I start reading literary criticism just to appreciate it a little more. So that's what I'm doing now. But it's fun to first start by just reading his work. I would definitely read some of his animal rights work too. Like I mentioned that the First Step, which it's a book. I have it somewhere here because there's I can send it to you later, the title, but it's a book which includes essays of famous vegetarians, and he wrote a very long essay introducing the book. And in the First Step, he bases it on visiting slaughterhouses in Tula. So it's very descriptive of the horrors of slaughterhouses and how all the animals are resisting and how violent the workers are in terms of twisting their tails to make them go forward, and how they're still flailing when they're on their backs and being dismembered. And just it's really gruesome details of how horrid a slaughterhouse is and how basically things haven't changed. When you read what's going on. Wow. Today.
That's so much information that I knew nothing about. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think Tolstoy should be resurrected. He has so much to offer on so many fronts. And my whole life, since I finished my PhD, all I do is read Tolstoy and Gandhi, and mostly Tolstoy, and people around him, people who were Tolstoyans, and they were most of them were vegetarians and animal rights people too. Huh. Gandhi, when he set up 2 ashrams in South Africa, one of them was called Tolstoy Farm. He was highly moved by and inspired by Tolstoy. And if you look at his list of recommended books, he has a list in an appendix, Gandhi does, and like a lot of them are Tolstoy, like out of his top 10 or 20 books.
That's
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
The more you know, right?
Yeah.
So you said you got your PhD in green learning. What exactly is green learning?
Well, I did it in political science, and my topic was how do people learn to care to environment and act, or become part of the environmental movement. So then I looked at some of the social movements in history and how people became aware of the issue. So I looked at the early American labor movement and the civil rights movement, and I just looked at the different channels for learning. So, sometimes it was like freedom songs or labor songs and theater and independent schools. There were so many schools that were set up by the labor movement. Or direct action or mass media or social movement media. Like the labor movement actually owned a lot of media at the turn of the last century. Mm-hmm. So I just looked at the different channels of learning and then tried to apply it to the environmental movement today. And what does it take to build a huge environmental movement? My case studies were climate change and BC rainforests. I spent some time in some of the rainforest campaigns in British Columbia.
So have you seen the documentary Cowspiracy?
Just 20 minutes. I was at the LA conference. And I watched part of it, and it was amazing. It was really good.
Yeah, I was going to want to know what your takeaway was because
I only saw 20 minutes, and I was really impressed. Like it was interesting how Greenpeace didn't want to do the interview.
Yeah, if you watch the whole thing, it's interesting because as it gets more and more into it, they actually start talking to a CEO of a dairy conglomerate, talk to dairy farmers, and they're open about it, saying, yeah, this is unsustainable. But yet Greenpeace is like, oh, we won't fucking touch that subject.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, it blows you away. So what is your takeaway? What do we need to do to have a sustainable environmental movement?
A sustainable environmental movement. Like, do you mean like for animals and just like in terms of the big picture? Yeah.
Something that will actually last and make constant improvement.
Yeah, I personally believe in like a mass-based grassroots movement. So if you look at the other movements like the civil rights movement or the labor movement, when they accomplished major changes, they were able to mobilize a lot of people. And I mean, my background's in political science, and there's a number of public pressure models, like how, governments tend not to be leaders when it comes to progressive social change. It often takes the public to push them. And it's true if you look at, like in Canada, when we got healthcare, sort of public healthcare, it was because it was a bottom-up movement. And when we got all the, the major labor legislation, it comes again from, bottom-up and grassroots movements and a strong labor movement. So I think for the environmental movement and the animal rights movement, we have to do the same thing, is have a mass-based grassroots movement. And just people engaged and, knowledgeable, but also engaged in terms of activism and organizing. So I believe in organizing. So the public has to organize because there are all these private interests, special interests, who are seeking profit and, property owners, but they at the cost of the environment and animal rights. So to counter that, you just need a very strong democratic grassroots movement.
What do you think we can do as animal rights activists right now to help build a bigger, better movement? Because what we've noticed and we've been talking to is that it seems in the last couple of years, a lot of the activism has been pushed away from grassroots and more towards the big, more national organizations.
Are you speaking in terms of the environmental movement?
Environmental, animal rights, just activism in general.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good move. Like, I think we have to build the grassroots, and there are some, like in the animal rights movement, there are grassroots movements. Like I think Farm is very good at engaging groups, certainly for World Day for Farmed Animals. I think PETA is trying to, support local activists. They certainly support safe groups, groups that I'm involved with whenever we do action. There's direct action everywhere that's emerging as a new force. So I think those are really important parts of the solution. In terms of environmental movement, I'm really encouraged by the climate change groups that are sort of mobilizing people on the ground and young people. So like the is it called 365, or there's a group that, and there was this huge rally in New York City recently, those kind of things. I think I'm very encouraged by those kind of things.
Yeah, I think it's like Change 365 or something.
Yeah, that's right.
So what was your origin? Like, what got you on this path towards activism and veganism?
When I was in university as an undergraduate, I was taking peace and conflict studies because I was worried about nuclear war. And then I heard about this film called The Animals film when I was in university, and it was being shown in the basement of the library, and I went to see it. And I had no idea that animals were tortured and confined and abused until I saw that film. It was narrated by Julie Christie, and The Animals film is the first graphic film of its kind that was made in the UK in the early 80s. And I had nightmares for 3 days. In particular, I remember this scene with farmers joking about the rape rack for sows. I just couldn't believe just the kind of abuse that was just like institutionalized, and it was all just, it was treated as a joke, but it was like so institutionalized. And I just found I was shocked. And after that, I became a vegetarian and an animal activist in university. And I didn't become vegan until 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. It took me a long while. I didn't even know the term vegan in the 1990s when I was vegetarian. And I bought like free-range eggs. I went through all of that thinking I was doing good. But then there were some radical students. I was teaching on contract at Queen's University in Kingston, and there were some students that were very strong on the vegan message. And I thought, oh, they're extremists and, whatever. But they eventually got to me. I mean, I watched the film The Witness. I don't know. Do you know The Witness, the people that made Peaceable Kingdom?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, no.
Yeah, it's a really good film. Anyways, that they showed this film, and then I was finally convinced, and I finally made the connection between the veal industry and milk and, all the murder and abuse that takes place. So then I became vegan. And then when I was teaching in university courses on social movements and qualitative research methods and Canadian politics, I always incorporated animal rights. So, and my form of activism back then was I would buy literally hundreds of copies of Peaceable Kingdom and, spread them and share them with the PER groups on campus and things like that. So that was my activism. And then more recently, 4 years ago, I adopted a dog for my mom. My mom was elderly, and she had to sell her house and move in with me, and I had to be her primary caregiver. And I wanted to get her a dog to help her with that transition. So we got a rescue from Project Jesse, Mr. Bean. And when we adopted Mr. Bean, I would walk him every morning along Lakeshore. It's a major street where I live. And we would see like 7 or 8 transport trucks of pigs each morning on our 1-hour walk during rush hour, early in the morning. And that changed me because it was every day I would see these trucks. I lived near the slaughterhouse, about 1 kilometer from it, and I knew it was there. And while I was living in this area, I asked other people, well, why don't you organize something? Like, why don't we do some public education or something? And then I would forget about it because, I'd only think about it a few times a year. But once I got Mr. Bean, he really put me in touch with the community, and I saw these trucks. And at the time, I was reading Tolstoy and Ramakrishna and Gandhi, biographies by Romain Rolland. Mm-hmm. He was a Nobel laureate, a vegetarian, who wrote biographies about people he thought were role models. So I'd been reading all these biographies, and each of these people engaged in community organizing when there was injustice within their community. And so with that in mind, there was this great injustice in my own backyard. So I just said, well, I have to do something. You can't always pass the buck. Like if there's something bad in your community, you just start organizing. And so then I called a meeting, and we had vegan potlucks and organizing meetings for half a year. And during that time, we started collecting footage. I went along the railway lines and got some footage of the kill floor in the Penn area of Quality Meat Packers, a pig slaughterhouse that has since gone bankrupt. But it was right in downtown Toronto. And then half a year later, after our group started, we started doing weekly vigils and doing 3 vigils a week. So for more than 3 years now, we've been doing 3 vigils bearing witness of pigs, cows, and chickens going to slaughter. And it was a promise that I made to the pigs. The first time I bore witness, I just said, okay, we'll do a minimum of 3. And so we've kept that promise. And basically what our group does now is we use a community organizing approach. And when you use community organizing, what that means is you're on the ground. So you're not just doing social media or sitting at a computer, but you're out in the community and you're out there regularly. And you're making connections with people in the neighborhood, with organizations, and you're welcoming, and we're inspired by Tolstoy's and Gandhi's love-based approach to social change. So we're not judgmental. And Tolstoy often quoted Jesus in saying, I didn't come here to judge you, I came here to save you. And so that's sort of the philosophy of the SAFE movement. We're not here to judge, but to save animals, the environment, people. And we're very inclusive and welcoming, and it's worked out quite well. So at our vigils, there are often people that eat meat or are vegetarian. Some people are vegan, and what we find with our vigils is two main objectives. One is that people sort of go on to the vegan journey, and a second one is that they become activists. Mm-hmm. So our goal is not only to have people go vegan, but to actually become activists and organizers. And that's a really important point for community organizing. It is to create leadership and the idea that everyone is a leader.
Sorry, Jordan.
I was just going to say, like, with us locally, from what I've experienced with activism, it seems super cliquey, where the vegans tend to kind of push out the non-vegans. Mm-hmm. And how do you combat that? How do you be more accepting of people who don't necessarily have your same ideologies 100%?
Yeah, we're pretty clear about that. Like, we post regularly, all are welcome. Like, one of the things also that we find is, like, vegans will say, oh, I'm already a vegan, I don't have to go to a vigil and bear witness. and so that's one issue that we confront, as well as, the issue that you brought up. And our response to that is, everyone has a duty to bear witness. It doesn't matter, whether you're vegan, an omnivore, or vegetarian. It's like, if there's an injustice in your community, and for us, slaughterhouse is ground zero. It's the most violent place on earth, mm-hmm. Along with, like, war zones, ground zeros for, war zones. And literally, it's the most violent place on earth. And we all have a responsibility, a duty to bear witness and just, learn, be open. And, and I think when people see the animals with their pleading eyes, and their terrified looks, their sadness, and how the animals sort of are there caressing each other and trying to give each other comfort, and how we're there, giving water to the pigs when they're thirsty in the summer. When people see all this, it's natural that they, A, not only go on the vegan path, but B, they suddenly become more courageous in, being an activist and being outspoken in a good way. So, like, a lot of the activism then takes place off-site, when people, like, talk to their, friends about what happened and things like that. But we're always, like, our philosophy has always been inclusive. And, like, a lot of people might have, like, a friend or a family member or a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's not vegan. They might be vegan, but, their siblings might not. And so we always tell people, like, please bring people to the vigil. Like, if people only saw this, it will help them, make that transition. So, yeah, our group has always been explicit about that, and it's not cliquey at all. Like, because if you use a community organizing approach, it's about people of all ages. Literally, like, we have grandmothers, we have babies that have come to our vigils. It's people of all colors, of all classes, of all professions coming to our vigil. That's classic community organizing, and if you use community organizing, it's a great way to combat, like, cliquiness in movements. And I know I've seen some of that in, the animal rights community, where vegans have a certain look, or they're a certain age, or they have a certain dress code. That doesn't happen with our vigils. It's community organizing. It's like the civil rights movement. It's literally people of all, colors, classes, ages, and so forth.
Does that approach also help with the burnout of doing a very long-term single issue campaign?
Absolutely. Like, what helps us in terms of avoiding burnout is using a positive love-based approach, and having a big turnout and having, the community there to support each other. So when people go to vigils, a lot of people say, oh, I can't do it. It's too frightening. It would be too difficult. I'll break down. I'll cry. Well, we say it's okay to cry. Most of us have cried, at some point when we go to vigils. But I say what makes the difference is you're not doing it alone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Sue Coe. She's a very famous animal rights artist based in New York State. But she said, if you bear witness alone, you'll go insane. But if you bear witness as a community, it's possible. And you find that with like other social movements. I mean, in the case of the Holocaust, there's been like some psychological studies that show people that didn't have community support who survived the Holocaust were much more likely to commit suicide. But if people had, community support, they had somebody there to help them, they were more likely to survive. And I think that's true with social movements. Like you avoid burnout if there's community there for you, helping you. And when you use a community organizing approach, it's not just about organizing events on site. You actually build friendships. You have social gatherings. You do other things. I've read a lot of books on Cesar Chavez and Gandhi and and Lois Gibbs, who organized against the environmental injustice issues. And what they say is like it's not easy when you first start community organizing. You might have like only a few people come. Like when we started our vigils, it was literally 2 women for the first summer for most of the vigils. But then now it's grown, and there's like 32 save groups around the world. Our vigils, if they're on Sundays when people can attend, we often have like 30, 40 people. So it's grown. And Cesar, when I read books on Cesar Chavez, he would say like when he first started, like nobody would come to meetings or just like a couple of people. And then he had to figure out techniques. And, in social movement theory, there are things called selective incentives. How do you draw people in? And he thought, okay, well, he'll have socials, he'll have dances, and that all helped. And then he also organized on a neighborhood basis. He would have meetings in different blocks with like an organizer per block. And then they would have meetings in their homes and then bring people out and do this regularly. And he helped build a mass movement. And Cesar Chavez, who was a vegetarian, was the first to successfully organize a labor union for farm workers in California. So, but he started small, and he was very inspired by Saul Alinsky and his books and his work on community organizing.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's the best way to do it. As social movement activists, we go through a lot of stuff, whether it be prison time for charges we might accrue from activism, or whether it just be from the things that we see. And having a community that can back us if we have like symptoms of PTSD or something from it is super important.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes all the difference. For the civil rights movement, the number of people that went to jail. We're having a civil disobedience action for the first time here in Toronto this Thursday at a cow slaughterhouse. And the way it's organized is I think about 6 people are going to sit down and refuse to move as the transport truck backs up into the slaughterhouse. But each of them will have a buddy. Mm-hmm. And then we'll also have a vigil during that time and have community support. And the buddy is actually responsible for, looking after that person all day and, taking care of their animals or, providing any needs that they have. And then also following through once they go through the court system.
When I was in my late teens, early 20s being an activist, I used to balk at all the, potlucks and gatherings and the social aspect of it. I'd be like, why are we spending this time on a Saturday doing a potluck? We should be out in front of the first store. We should. And now I look back and I'm like, God, it's really important to build that community.
Absolutely. I agree. Because for a number of reasons, like just because you get to know each other as a full human being and like all your interests and, and your needs and so forth. And you're there for people when they have, needs and crises or whatever. It helps with burnout, but also I think like getting to know people, you get to know their special interests or their talents. And you, even at these potlucks, you do a lot of organizing, right? Mm-hmm. Because you just find out like who people are and, what their interests are. And then, it leads to, a collaboration.
Or you get discussions on why gluten's also bad. But what do you like? How have you seen the movement change since you've been involved? Like, do you see it changing for the better, or do you see some things that are happening? You're like, I really wish it wouldn't be changing that way.
In Canada, things have been going sort of in a good direction. Like people are way more aware for a number of reasons. And in Toronto specifically, like there are more and more activists. Like there's a huge activist community in Toronto, and it's going quite well. And then Mercy for Animals Canada came to the country recently, and this year there were like 6 undercover exposés, and they had 1,200 media mentions in Canada. So we've never had that much attention on graphic, truthful representation of how animals suffer in factory farms, in transportation and slaughterhouses. So it's been really good for us in terms of, I've seen the changes, like just people on the street, come to us, like they're old men, like in their 70s, come to us. Oh, I saw, the expose of the beating of dairy cows in Chilliwack, British Columbia. Like they come to us when we're doing our vigil and tell us. So the level of awareness among the public is higher. There's Toronto Pig Safe just ran a 1-month ad campaign, Why Love One But Eat the Other, in Toronto's subway system. We put up 1,000 posters, and it has a lot of it has a wonderful picture comparing a dog and a pig and so forth, but it also has some smaller pictures that show the truth of what happens in factory farms, and it has a lot of text, and that really raised awareness among the public. I just think there's like so much happening. Like the vegan and animal rights movement is just like growing and growing, and I've seen the changes from the 1990s when I didn't even know the term. And I was actually the president of the University of Toronto Students for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and I did not even know the term vegan. And to now, where the average public, at least in Canada and Toronto, like there's a high level of awareness. We ran a vegan campaign in the subways. We actually called it ivegan.ca. And previous years when other groups ran it, it was like a vegetarian. It was a Be Veg campaign. Mm-hmm. But I think people are already like, we're ready for like a vegan campaign.
What was the response to that vegan campaign?
It was great because people in subways don't have a lot to do. And the posters were really colorful and very informative, and just average people like saw it. And there was like 15 million imprints with that campaign, according to the Toronto public transit system.
Wow. That's really impressive. 15 million imprint.
Yeah, it might be the same person because, seeing it several times, but they were in every single subway car because we had 1,000 posters.
That's really amazing. I don't really see that too much of that stuff down here, unfortunately. No. How much do you guys see an emergence of new laws to combat your activism, kind of like ag-gag laws are being introduced in the States?
No, we haven't seen that in Canada. We feel fortunate about that. So, we haven't seen that.
So when you guys are bearing witness, like how close are you to the slaughterhouse? What can you actually see? Like if somebody was going to show up for the first time, what would you want to tell them to expect?
Yeah, every slaughterhouse is different, and the access is different too. And but what we found is that there is a surprisingly great access to the animals if you just put the time in and do these regular vigils. Like sometimes the transport trucks with cows heading to Toronto's 2 cow slaughterhouses sit on a public road for like 10-15 minutes sometimes, and then you're just standing there with them, and you can take a lot of footage. You can try to talk to the cows. We've tried to give water or apples to the cows. They never accept it. They're so nervous and frightened, and because they can smell 5 miles away. And when you go to this industrial area in Toronto, the northwest part of the Toronto, it reeks of blood and bones, and it's terrible. And the animals are really frightened in the trucks. They're really sensitive, but we take footage and we try to show people that each animal is an individual. That's one of the strong points about doing these vigils is like when you see them, it's so obvious. Like they're individuals. They want to live. They're no different from you or me or your cat, your dog or cat. So every slaughterhouse is different. There's a chicken slaughterhouse near those 2 cow slaughterhouses in Toronto, again, northwest part of the city. Mm-hmm. And the trucks pretty much go in right away. Sometimes they might stop for literally like 10 seconds, and you just run up, try to take some footage, just say a few words to the chickens, and then it zooms in. And in the winter, those chicken trucks are covered, so you can't even bear witness. In terms of the pigs, Toronto Pig Safe was the first group that started, and we had a tremendous amount of access. There was like a long set of lights for these transport trucks that had to, about a kilometer away from the slaughterhouse, where the transport trucks would often stop before turning and heading towards the slaughterhouse. And it was on a major thoroughfare, Lakeshore and Strawn, and right in front of the exhibition. It's sort of a major theme park. And so sometimes the trucks would stop there for like, half a minute or a minute. And pigs are so expressive. And you could touch the pigs, would give water. We have one video that went viral. It's called Water for Pig Angel Victims during Toronto's heat wave, and got about 80,000 hits on YouTube. And it just shows the pigs suffering of dehydration and heat, and how and their pleading faces, and us giving them water, and missing most of the trucks, because the reality is, what we do is only like a drop in the bucket. We're just helping a few pigs in a truck. Mm-hmm. Some of the trucks pass and we don't even get a chance to do anything. And we just showed the reality of how horrific it is. And so in all the slaughterhouses that we've been to, there's access to the animals. And that's what the SAVE groups, I think, have shown, is that, if you're killing 700 to 800 million land animals in Canada alone, believe me, like if you just put some time and see, what their transport routes are, where the slaughterhouses are, you can actually have access to those animals and bear witness. Whether it's at an intersection where they're stopping at a set of lights, or if it's in front of the slaughterhouse, if the trucks are stopping on the public road for a while, there's a lot of access. And I think that's one of the benefits of like the SAVE movement of what we've shown, is that, there's billions of animals being killed around the world, like 65 billion land animals a year. There's a lot of access if you just look. And in case of the United States, there's a couple of indexes where you can locate the slaughterhouses. Uh-huh. So there's one called the Factory Farm Index, and there's another one as well.
Have you had any confrontations with the actual employees? Like, have they had negative reactions towards your vigils?
When we started, we were quite explicit in having like an animal rights and pro-worker rights stance. Mm-hmm. So I've read like Gail Eisnitz's book, Slaughterhouse. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but It's really brilliant. She talks to slaughterhouse workers and whistleblowers, like inspectors and so forth. And she shows how slaughterhouses are absolute hell for animals and workers as well. And so we started right away. And there was some controversy when we did that, because there's, as you know, like a lot of animal rights people are really anti-slaughterhouse worker, right?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, I feel.
Yeah. So that was, but right away when we started, we like in our brochures, in our postings on Toronto Pig Safe, we made it clear that, we're inspired by Gail Eisnitz and, this position. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we don't say that workers don't have a responsibility for what they're doing, because they do, and they do have, but ultimately, I think it's the consumers who are paying, and it's also the managers and owners of slaughterhouses, which are, profiting from this system. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to have that larger analysis, and we've always had a love-based approach. So at the cow slaughterhouses, like the workers always have a break right in front of the slaughterhouse, and we talk to them and we leaflet them. And I've met with slaughterhouses, house workers on the weekends and had coffee with them, and they tell me everything that goes on inside. So I have like detailed testimonies of the horrible abuses.
What have their reactions when you've been talking to them been towards your campaign?
Initially, it took a little while, but the fact that we didn't go away, that we're there every single week, and that we talk to them, and there's, there's a few of them that really don't like us, and then, try to mock us or whatever. But even that dies off, because once you're so familiar, because you're there every week, they stop doing that. But a lot of them, like, we know them by name. They talk to us. The transport truck drivers are harder to break through, to break through in terms of a relationship. But we've had some success and got to know them by name and talk to them and had conversations. And, when we first started the Pig Safe vigils, one of the workers told us, our managers told us not to speak to you. So it's in the interest of management, to keep us separated. But because we're there every week, when you use a community organizing approach, you're there all the time. It's only human, to start, talking to each other.
Yeah, we talked to an actual undercover investigator, and what he said was, in talking to a lot of the employees that he had to work with during his investigations, was most of them deplored what they were doing. You know, they would still do the actions because they were limited and enforced by management and time and speed constraints and things like that. But they did not like, you know, the working conditions. They didn't like what they were having to do.
Yeah, we find the same thing. I think, I mean, a few of them say otherwise, but the vast majority, I think, are like that. One of our members, Mandy Howard, is a nurse, and she comes to our vigils, and she actually treats some of the slaughterhouse workers because her hospital is nearby. And, you know, when you use a community organizing approach and you get so many different kinds of people with different professions there, like that sort of took our campaign to another level because they thought, wow, that's the nurse that, you know, serves us, right? And so there was a little more respect for our group.
Yeah.
And the other thing we do is once in a while we have special vigils, like an all-day vigil. We've had 2 30-hour vigils at the cow slaughterhouse where there's a lot of solidarity for the animals because we actually slept there, you know, in the filthy, stinky place, and it felt like, oh, there's more solidarity here. And when we do those special vigils, we like have vegan food and we give it to the workers. When the workers at Riding Regency Cow Slaughterhouse were locked out 2 summers ago, we brought them food every time we went there. Like we brought them vegan BLTs, kale salad, and so forth. Kathy Stevens, who started Catskills Animal Sanctuary, happened to be in Toronto that time, and she came to our vigils and she gave free books to the workers and signed it and invited them to, you know, to the sanctuary if they ever, and the owner as well of St. Helens. And so, you know, we do all these different things where we're reaching out to the workers. We still have some ambitions in terms of doing more. Like I believe in the like a just transition strategy. Lois Gibbs, who organized against like Love Canal, toxic contamination. She had worked with various progressive labor organizers on a just transition for people working in the, you know, the toxic chemical and petroleum and atomic industries. And in Canada, there are some unions that are working for a just transition for people working in the tar sands. I think the same thing should happen for people working in the animal exploitation industry. You know, just transition involves the government, instead of putting funds, as our current neoconservative government is, into like slaughterhouse improvement. Yeah, the Harper government has a $60 million slaughterhouse improvement program. That is an entire waste of money, and that's so harmful. Like, you know, from an anarchist perspective, like this is typical sort of, you know, state violence.
Yeah.
But what governments should be doing is the opposite, is putting subsidies and money into, you know, transitioning to a nonviolent, vegan, environmentally friendly, healthy economy. And so I think that should happen for the animal exploitation industries, like a just transition for these workers. So they're not working and, you know, committing violence and murder, you know, 8 hours a day.
You know, that's the first time I've ever even heard that idea. And that's kind of shocking to me because it seems so appropriate.
We have to work on it. I think it's definitely going to be part of the solution. And I think that has to happen for the tar sands as it's, you know, was necessary for, you know, the atomic chemical.
Yeah, I've heard about it in other industries. I just never have thought about it in the terms of animal rights. I
don't know if it's been, I don't know of any cases of it, like people working on it in North America, but it's worth exploring to see if in Europe or some other place, they have these kind of, you know, positive incentives. It wouldn't surprise me because I know in like a number of European countries like Germany and the Scandinavian countries, like there is a move to have subsidies that support, you know, climate protection. And more people are, you know, with Cowspiracy and other initiatives, a lot of people see the links also with veganism, right? So I think that's going to be part of the conversation.
Fortunately, like some of those NGOs are actually stepping up, like Rainforest Action Network is now producing ads online that talk about animal exploitation and all that, like water usage and stuff like that, which is super impressive. Yeah,
I think it's amazing. Finally, it's great.
You know, one of the questions we get asked a lot that I always like to pass on and get other people's, you know, opinions on is every time we're talking to new people, we get asked, how do you organize? How do you start organizing? I want to start, you know, a protest here. And I always just have the quick take, well, just do it. Do you have any like specific advice for those type of people?
I agree. Just do it. And you know, you start small. Expect to start small. Like when we started Toronto Pig Save, it was like 2 people doing summer vigils, all like for July and August, and then it grew and grew. Read some books on community organizing and techniques you could use. Remember that Cesar Chavez, when he started United Farm Workers, he had nobody coming to meetings, like just maybe a couple of people. So he had to use special techniques to draw people in. Just do it, and I think the other thing is to do it regularly. Like if you're going to do things once a year, it's not a way to build up a huge grassroots movement. But if you do things regularly, like our group, Toronto Pig Save, we're committed to 3 vigils a week, all year round, including Christmas holidays. It does not matter because the animals are still exploited all those times. There are other safe groups that have rallies every 6 weeks. New York Farmed Animal Save has vigils at live markets in Harlem, New York City, once a month, and they've already done more than 12. There's a New Jersey Farmed Animal Save, and they do vigils every month at a calf slaughterhouse. It's the biggest calf slaughterhouse called Costelli Brothers in New Jersey. Melbourne Pig Save does like a rally every 6 months. There's a new group called Sonoma County Chicken Save in California, and they're doing regular vigils now. And it was started by Lauren Ornelius, and she, Food Empowerment Project, and it's a huge chicken slaughterhouse called in Sonoma County. So, anyways, they just had their first vigil for World Day for Farmed Animals. The other thing is, like, it's also good to organize around symbolic days. A lot of social movements like United Farm Workers did that, and I think Farm is brilliant in doing World Day for Farmed Animals every year, and they've engaged so many groups in Canada, the U.S., and worldwide. For this year, it was on Gandhi's birthday, in late October. Mm-hmm. So I think you just learn about the techniques that community organizers have used. So I'd recommend reading books on community organizing by Saul Alinsky, for example. He wrote Reveille for Radicals and Rules for Radicals. I would read books on Cesar Chavez. There's one called Ministry of the Dispossessed. I would read Gandhi's autobiography and his book on direct action. I'd read Martin Luther King and other books on the civil rights movement. And Lois Gibbs has a number of books on the environmental justice movement. So I just read these books, and they have lots of techniques to share, and how to do things. And as we said earlier on this show, the socials are part of it, potlucks, and just building a network, organize some vegan potlucks and organizing meetings and so forth.
What I was thinking is really interesting, though, is here in Utah, we have all of these like ag-gag laws, and we've actually had charges, no convictions yet.
The only 2 charges in the United
States. The only 2 charges in the United States. But the factory farms still put out, they put haystacks in front of their operations so that people can't see into them. They're still afraid, even though it's against the law for people to, go and record there. They're afraid of people seeing it. And so I think it's obviously,
it's a testament of what we should be. Yeah, we should be going out there and being at that place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say about Leo Tolstoy in his book, The Kingdom of God is Within You. He talks about the evil committed by, governments in terms of military and war and conscription. And then he talks about there's that evil, just like using force to protect to protect the unequal distribution of property and so forth. But he goes, then there's another layer of evil where you lie about it and hide about it and deny what you're doing is wrong. And so when you look at these factory farms, not only are they committing, extreme violence against innocent animals, but there's this other layer where they're hiding and they're lying about what they're doing. So the challenge for us is just that much greater, and we need to be upfront about it and point out to them, the evil that they're doing, and on top of that, even lying about what the evil that they're committing.
So we can never talk to a vegan and not talk about food for a little bit. It just seems impossible.
Yeah.
What is like your favorite new vegan like food?
Toronto is just amazing in general. So.
Oh God, I know.
It's hard to know where to start because I think one measure of the success of our movement is that there's so much, like there's more and more. And I mean, I love tofurkey, so I have tofurkey, the tofurkey balls. I have 2 of them in my freezer right now. I mean, I like their pizza. They just came out with that, and I like their pockets.
I haven't been able to find those yet.
No, I haven't either. I've been like dying to find them.
That's what I really want, their pizza pockets and all that stuff.
They're amazing. I mean, they were giving out samples at the LA National Animal Rights Conference, but they finally came to Toronto, so I'm happy about that. I like all the yogurts, like the I'm sorry, the yogurts that are not just soya yogurt, but the other one, like
the almond.
Almond.
They have coconut too.
That's it. The coconut. Yeah. They're really amazing. I love that. And I personally, I get a basket every week of fruits and vegetables. So I make a lot of my food that is pretty much whole food. But I enjoy the products as well, all the vegan products.
So you said you had 2 tofurkey balls in your freezer right now.
Yeah.
I love to get everyone's personal favorite glaze for tofurkeys.
The one I got is larger, so it came with the gravy, the vegan gravy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to enjoy that. But I mean, they recommend just like using orange juice and Bragg's.
Yeah. Is that what you use? And like I think a little bit of sage, I think too, is what they recommend.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't Callie, who's my sister and Jeremy's wife, she uses like a soda glaze. And it's really good.
Yeah,
like cola.
A soda with paprika, cumin, and cayenne pepper.
I want to try that. That sounds fun.
And then we instead of putting it in the oven, we put it in a slow cooker.
Wow! Really?
And
wow!
Cook it like for 4 to 6 hours.
Oh my God!
It
like
melts.
Falls apart.
So
it's
good.
Damn delicious.
Oh, I should try that. But I don't have a slow cooker, but it sounds good.
Just a pot on low would do the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of vegan restaurants in Toronto, right?
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
And I know that we've had someone on, Jenny. She has Apocalypse Now Bakery.
Yeah.
And there's just a bunch there. It really makes me want to visit Toronto, to be honest.
I hope you do visit. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of vegan bakeries like Apocalypse Now. There's Bunners. They have two. They just opened a second location, and they came out with a book, and it's gluten-free vegan baked goods. There's several other just vegan bake shops alone, and there's like more and more restaurants all the time. And Grasslands is one of my favorites. We have Loving Hut, which is probably the biggest franchise in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've been to those. And yeah, there's just more and more. We have a group called Toronto Vegetarian Association, and they organize the largest veg food festival in North America each year in September. And they have a resource guide, which lists all the vegan and veg restaurants. And they have maps of Toronto with all these locations. And yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I think it's also a measure of success for this growing movement. There was like a vegan butcher shop that opened just recently.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Explain that a little bit. That's confusing.
Well, it looks like a butcher shop, and like they have like burgers and slices. It's all vegan, but the way it looks like you're walking into a very clean, upscale butcher shop.
Wow,
with no blood.
So if I was in Toronto, only had a time for one meal, where do I go? What do I get?
That's a good question. I know Hogtown Vegan is probably a favorite of a lot of people. So if you like comfort food, they're really good. So I'd recommend them. And they have everything like sort of junk food kind of thing, but it's sort of more upscale.
So comfort. It's that like mashed potatoes and chicken and waffles
fish
kind of
chips thing? And all those kind of things. Yeah.
Nice.
I love it because I'm vegan for the animals. Kind of, I'm okay with the junk comfort food.
Absolutely.
So, how can people, get in contact with you, follow your work, and get involved themselves?
Well, we have a website, Toronto Pig Save. We're also on YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr. So we use all the different social media. And we also have a website that we're just building right now called the Save Movement. There are 32 Save groups around the world. They're mostly like in Canada, the US, Australia, with one in Brazil. And we encourage people like to join our vigils and see for themselves. I actually believe people have a duty to bear witness. It's not just something to do, but we actually have an obligation. And it's a life-changing experience. And it just makes you a stronger animal rights voice. We encourage people also to start new groups. I mean, we only have 32 groups that are mostly in North America and Australia. So, if there's a slaughterhouse in your community, think about, doing a vigil there. I think it's something that's necessary for every slaughterhouse. And I hope in the future we will just see more and more people doing regular vigils at slaughterhouses.
I was just going to say, well, we end every episode saying fuck, shit, damn. Would you mind saying it for us this week?
Okay, sure. Fuck, shit, damn.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you. I'm going to totally check out some Tolstoy for my traveling. It sounds something I can't believe I've never was aware, actually.
Okay, and I do have a PDF of one of the books called Walk in the Light and 23 Tales.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if I could send it to you via Skype, but if you give me your email, I can definitely email you the PDF I have.
Absolutely.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I'll send it right over as soon as we finish.
Cool. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Oh, you too. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
This week you heard
LTLP by Edit.
Right now you're listening to
Encore by Bass Nectar.
And as always,
El Comandante's Which Side Are You On?
which side are you on? Okay, I'm sometimes I get tired of saying the whole iTunes thing, but just do it. Rate and review
Subscribe.
us. Subscribe. Steal someone's phone. Do it to them. If someone's logged into the computer, do it there too. It's the best way you can help the podcast without giving us money. I mean, money is great. Don't get me wrong. We really need sponsors because fuck, we can't do it without it. But if you can't do that, this is the next best thing.
And then be our friend on social media. If you want to like us, that'd make us feel good.
It does.
If you want to follow us, that'd creep us out a little bit. Unless you're doing it on our social media, then that'd be cool.
I love it when people favorite things we post, like the random things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
And we post a lot online that we don't talk about on the show. Almost every day we're posting something new online. So totally check it out. WhicHsidePodcast.com. Click on the social tab.
Fuck shit down.
Fuck shit down.
Which Side is produced by the Which Side Media Collective.